Okay, now it's time for the panel discussion. So I hope you've got all your questions ready. And we'll just get the chairs on. We'll invite the guests to join us and take a seat. And then we'll be ready to take your questions. Thank you. Okay, guys, there's no particular order for the questions apart from one. Gulwali has to leave fairly soon. Sadly and regrettably. So if anyone has a question for Gulwali about his book, his journey from Afghanistan, now's your time. So, question for Gulwali, anybody?
The floor is yours.
Yes. If you want to say your name, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. Yeah. En français alors? No, we'll do it in English. We'll keep it in English.
Great question. Yes, I have. We live together now. Yeah, he actually had to go back and come back. It's another long story, but we live together finally.
And your family is still...
Yeah, I'm not seeing them for 10 years, yeah. I hope to see them at some point.
Question? Yeah, immediately behind, and then we'll take you. Yeah. Nope.
When you were in the mountains as a shepherd, what did you know of England?
Great question. Not very much, except that we were told stories of how we beat the British. There was 3 Anglo-Afghan wars, and they lost, and we won.
Yes. Okay. So speak up again. Sorry.
Why are you not able to travel back to Afghanistan?
Sure. So when I first came to the UK, I claimed asylum. It took me 5 years that the UK government accepted me as a refugee, even though I was a genuine refugee from day one. But there's a process which is very complicated, and the gentleman next to me will know more about it. So when you become a refugee, that means you're not able to travel back to the country of origin. So the travel document that I have, I can travel anywhere, but I can't go back to Afghanistan. And also, I would love to go to see my family. I miss Afghanistan, but if I go back, I lose my refugee status. And also, it's very risky to go. So Afghanistan is more unstable and insecure than what it was 10 years ago. So that's why I don't want to go back, and I can't go back officially, illegally.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Next, any more for Gulwali? Yeah. Are you in contact?
Yes, I live in constant fear for their lives, but my mother and every other mother's. Sometimes I could actually bring her here legally, but the system is very complicated. But I don't want to, because I feel like, what about those other mothers who doesn't have sons in the UK or Europe? What about them? So there has to be a bigger solution. So the war has to stop, the conflict has to end, and then for family to be together and reunited. So it's really sad. It's a long time that we haven't seen each other and we haven't met. And we live in hope that we will meet one day.
Yep.
Great. I feel bad I'm answering all the questions. Okay. So when I was in the journeys, when I went to Iran, I meet up with other refugees or migrants. There was 5 of us in a group. Then I met friends. And sometime I would be in tens, sometime in 20, sometime in thousands, or sometime alone. So there was times, for example, in Italy, I was on my own. In France, there was times I was on my own. Even in Greece. But most of the time I would be with people who travel companions, with other refugees who will be traveling together.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to let him go now, because he's got to A, eat, and B, catch a train.
Yeah, thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's hear it for Gulwali. You'll be pleased to know he's already signed the copies of the books that you'll be taking home. Okay, any questions? It's up to you. Choose who you'd like to ask a question to, and let's hear it. Yeah? Yeah, gentleman there. Okay, who wants to take that? Caroline, do you want to, or Miriam, guys want to have a go at that? Or is it a broader question for the UNHCR? Whoever fancies it. Yeah, Andre?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. because the very idea of international protection for refugees rests on the premise that this is a shared responsibility, rests on the premise that there is international cooperation, that the countries work together. This is an issue of such a scope that there is no country in the world that can deal with this on its own. Certainly that has been the case in Europe with Greece and with Italy, and this is where we have been constantly advocating for the European partners to work together with these countries. The mere fact that these people have landed on their shores doesn't make them uniquely the problem for Greece or Italy. We have also argued and advocated from the very beginning that there need to be procedures in place. The procedures that can, on one hand, address the legitimate concerns of the governments, the legitimate concerns of the states, when it comes to security and so on. But these procedures need to be robust, but they also need to be protection sensitive. They need to be able to identify those who need protection and those who may not need protection. I think what needs to be recognized is that the movement across the Mediterranean was a mixed one. There were people who were also on the move with an ambition to better their lives. Now, they may not have a claim to protection. It goes to the very essence of protection and asylum in Europe. We want to see that the refugees benefit from it, that it's not abused, and it's in the interest of the governments and the refugees that is so.
So, Andre, just in broad brush terms, in broad brush terms, do you think that all countries should be adopting a similar policy?
This is a matter for the governments to decide.
Sure,
what kind of
but as a matter of opinion, would it help? I think what the question was driving at was, would this ease the crisis, and by spreading the burden? I think that's what we're...
Obviously, this is something that we have been advocating for, that there is an international sharing, that this is in the spirit of the convention and the treaty that the states have adhered to, that this is considered as a shared responsibility.
And is that in train at all? Are there talks going on to do this?
Well, there are currently no talks at all about, because I believe there is an EU-Turkey deal currently in force in the Mediterranean, which sets out another set of challenges.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up, or is that... Are you happy with that?
Kind of like some idea for those of you guys who've been in Germany. And you all see I spent quite a lot of time in Germany, and they were kind of regretful to the fact that Britain left the EU this week, because they feel like that we've kind of let go of some of our responsibility, and they're shouldering so much responsibility at the moment, financially in Greece, as well as people in there. Just a little more of a kind of how did it feel when you were there, and also the great film you showed us?
So I think we had a very specific experience in this tiny village of Schneider, so we absolutely can't speak in general about Germany. It was also, we were filming in January, it was a very different time. The experience we absolutely had with this village is because of their history, that they were very, very happy and enthusiastic to help the refugees that had come. There was never a sentiment or a talk of other countries not pulling their weight. If anything, it was like other regions in Germany not pulling their weight the same way that this village had done. So yeah, there was no feeling like that. No one felt like in where we were that they were doing too much or that they were being put out. It was really a sense of like wanting to help and having a positive experience with the refugees that had moved in there.
I think it's also interesting to ask whether the countries have a sense of a moral duty to share the burden of refugees. Was that something do you get a sense of that at all, Andre, or Eugenia? Is that something you have a view on?
I think I answered that question. I mean, it is the very nature of the international refugee protection that it rests on the premise that the countries work together and share the burden. What we have not seen in Europe last year, we have not seen a concerted joint effort. We have seen a lot of knee-jerk reactions. We have seen a lot of fences going up. We have seen reactions that have then increased further the anxiety and the fears among people. But also we have seen, an outpour of generosity and welcome, and that has been something that I would say has equally characterized the reactions of the populace of many people around Europe itself.
Okay. Another question? We'll take someone who hasn't asked one initially, and then we can always come back to you guys. So yes, over there, the hand up there, yeah.
What effect do you think Brexit will have on Britain's position in taking in refugees?
Anyone to pick that one up? I'm happy.
Thank you for that. I'm not an expert on the UK policy, immigration policy, but I don't know. Like I don't feel like saying a lot about Brexit because it's something that is so recent, and we don't know how it's going to develop. That there will be a lot of things going on in the following months and years before we can actually have an idea of what this will mean for Europe and for the UK. But linking the two questions, the previous one and this one, I think that the example of Lebanon tells the entire story. I mean, Lebanon is a small country with poor infrastructure, and they are hosting more than 1 million refugees from Syria. Now in Europe, with our wealth and our infrastructure, we are discussing, arguing about having hundreds or thousands of people spread across the continent. I think that tells you a lot. I mean, I don't think it's a moral duty. It's just a good thing to do and the rational thing to do, to spread and distribute these people across the continent, collaborate, cooperation. It's just sensible. But about UK immigration policy, I don't know.
There is a clear legal duty. I mean, the European countries do have a legal obligation to provide protection to those who seek asylum. They are signatories to the 1951 Refugee Convention. There is the treaty to which they need to adhere to. So that is really important.
But lots of them simply aren't doing it, as we've seen with the erection of barriers and all sorts of obstacles throughout Europe and throughout the European community, which is.
And clearly, it's important to notice that the region has been shouldering this burden for more than 5 years now, without substantial support to these countries, and without substantial support for the refugees who are there. It is in enlightened self-interest of Europe that the entire region does not become destabilized. And therefore, this is, again, coming to the point about the international cooperation and the international responsibility and burden sharing.
Okay. Yeah, Roger?
Yeah, I spent this morning, as I've done the last few weeks, taking some school children on the responsibilities of volunteering and getting involved. I'm quite proud that in Britain we give a lot to charity, but I'm ashamed that we don't put our hands up and volunteer as we should. And I think this is one of the cases where Brexit may well have made us more insular, and I think we should be putting our hand up and saying we'll take some of the responsibility in some of the refugees.
Yeah.
Can you speak a bit more about the logistics and the hurdles of getting aid to Syria and neighbouring countries?
Originally, the logistics were very difficult because we and a number of the major charities were persona non grata as far as Assad was concerned. So from 2011 to 2013, we were not officially allowed to be in Syria at all. I can tell you that we managed to get food and we managed to get medicines in, and we managed to get them distributed. I can't say that officially because officially we weren't allowed there, and we spent most of the time dealing with the refugees and with the children on the borders. We do have reserves of food and medicine all around the world, so whenever emergencies happen, we get planes off the ground and food and medicine there fast. But Syria has been, as I said, the biggest problem we've ever experienced, and There's a big logistic problem of just getting to enough people. There's huge numbers of people there, all wanting food, all wanting water, all wanting clothing, medicine. And we are struggling, as all the charities are. We are helped by money from the British government. The British government do at least spend their 0.7 of 1% of GDP on foreign help, foreign aid, and I'm pleased to say a lot of it actually is spent via the charities, because if we are in a better position to spend that government money in certain countries, then we get that aid from the British government. We spend it on their behalf.
Thanks. I think perhaps that's, sorry, let's take another question there, yeah? Okay, no, but carry on. No, it's your turn.
How do we distribute refugees? So I think Bill Laurie, who spoke earlier, said it took him 5 years to be asylum, I think he said. How do we, when we take refugees on, do we, like in the film, send them down to different communities, or do they all end up on a bus to, some city somewhere? How do we integrate them?
I don't really know.
Well, it can take a long time, but do you want to talk
Okay,
about the process? Can be very lengthy.
Just a few words first about the logistics. I mean, the work in Syria is enormously difficult and dangerous, and make no mistake about it. There are more than 13 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. I'm not saying that they're displaced, but they're in such a situation where they lack medicine, food, water, etc. Working is enormously difficult. The challenges are great. Even when you get all of the agreements in place, you're never certain at the very last minute whether something will change at the very last checkpoint and whether you would be able to go through or not. The tactics of siege have been used by all parties to the conflict as the means of subduing and getting certain areas or certain population to either kick the government or the opposition forces out, or to lay arms, etc. So it has been frustrating and dangerous. Equally so, each of the countries in the neighboring in the neighborhood poses certain challenges. Iraq, which suffered a massive spillover of the Syrian effect last year. 4 million Iraqis have been displaced just by that. So one needs to bear that in mind, that there is a different context in each of these countries. Coming back to your question about the refugees who are coming to the UK. First of all, there are those who arrive on the borders of this country and claim asylum, and they go through the process that Guwali described earlier. There are currently also programs which is basically a settlement program, and this is part of our call to the governments in the world to provide safe venues for refugees instead of taking these dangerous journeys, because there is something profoundly wrong when the Syrians, who are fleeing one of the deadliest and most destructive conflicts in recent history, have no other alternative but to board the boats managed by these smugglers and risk their lives. So that other channel is, for example, a resettlement where through us, we identify people in need of, and these are vulnerable cases such as victims of rape, victims of torture, women, girls at risk, etc., who are then go through the certain procedure. We submit their cases to the governments who have resettlement programs. They look at it. They decide whether they are taking a case or not, and once they arrive, then they are received in the community. There is an effort by the local authorities as well as by the Home Office, because the Home Office now has a Minister for Syrian Resettlement, Mr. Richard Harrington. They are given language training, the orientation, etc. So, and this is how it works. And the current quota for the UK, what was committed by the Prime Minister last September, was to resettle 20,000 Syrians through that program by the end of this Parliament, but essentially by May 2020.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Has anybody got any questions for our photographers or for our filmmakers? Yeah, over there, at the back. Yeah.
I'd like to direct my question to the marvelous mum who set up our charity.
Samara.
Thank you. If you had to give one piece of advice to a set of parents
think that's a really good question. I think if you're choosing to do something like this independently, then the most important thing to do is to find the right partners on the ground, because without that, you know, you can't do anything. Having people that you can trust, that you can work with, is absolutely essential.
Just give some examples. What do you mean by partners on the ground? Are we talking about people in Syria there?
Yes,
or,
in Syria.
Yeah.
So, for example, I have a number of partners in Iraq, and I have one main partner in Syria. And, you know, you need to be, if you are not there personally distributing the aid, then you need to be able to rely 100% on the people that are doing it. But it's not just as simple as sending a lorry load or a container load of aid. They need to be set up to deal with receiving aid, importing aid into the country. They need to be able to deal with the government's tax exemptions, that sort of thing. So there's quite a lot to take into account. It's been, it was an interesting journey. And, you know, likewise, the logistics of getting aid into Syria is incredibly complex, but it's not impossible.
Have you been out there? And if so, how many times have you?
I would dearly love to go out, but my husband won't let me.
Okay. No, but you've organised that sort of chain, because, yeah.
Yeah,
Tell us a little
yeah.
bit about how you know, somebody hands you a whole bunch of clothes. Tell us the story of that bunch of clothes and how it gets to Syria.
So basically, it started off just with me organising an enormous amount of collecting aid. I had 2 teams of people working in 2 different places for a couple of weeks, sorting and packing all the clothes. It was enormous. I mean, a whole lorry load of clothing. It's really hard to explain to someone just the sheer volume of that. It's like 90 cubic metres. I realised when I came to the end of that process that I couldn't possibly ask all the people in my life to go through that again, because although I was willing, I realised that I'd exhausted the goodwill of everyone that I knew. So I kind of had this vision to see lots of churches doing what I'd done, but on a smaller scale. I'd give them all the instructions, how to sort everything, how to pack it, how we do it, you know, the quality control as well, because we really want it to be a gift of love, not just simply sending our cast-offs. Unfortunately, some people see it as an opportunity to get rid of things, but we want to send things that are an encouragement to people that have lost a lot of hope. So, you know, I set out these guidelines, got people on board, and now what happens is that it's mainly churches, but also individuals, sometimes schools, and I give a detailed set of instructions. This is what we want, this is how we want it packaged and labelled, and this is where you need to bring it to on such and such a date. And you also need to raise a little bit of money to help us transport it as well, because obviously the money needs to come from somewhere. So people bring it. We have a number of appeals throughout the year. I also ask people to collect specific items, like we do care packs for pregnant and postnatal women. We've done some for women that have escaped ISIS, and we've also been doing them for families as well, and babies of specific ages. So we give people a shopping list of items that they buy, they package them a certain way, and we send them out and get them distributed to those people. So.
Okay, there was someone else, I think, in the middle there who wanted to ask one. Yeah, sorry, yeah, and then we'll come to you there. Sorry, yeah.
I loved your film, and I just think everyone should see them, because it brings the human side to these families and these people that are risking their lives, and it's great to see that happy story. I just wondered what the plan was for it.
So I think Miriam and I are filmmakers in New York, and for us, the most important part of this mission was showing a human story. So you can become very numb to the numbers, statistics, watching the news. So our aim was to tell this story of wonderful Hamza who agreed to let us do it. And then the second aim was for it to be available to as many people around the world as possible and for free. So we built a website, Hamza the Documentary Where It All Lives, and then along with that we've got an educational curriculum where you can learn more about the crisis. And then the third thing on the website is that you can take action. So you can volunteer, sign petitions in large or small ways, very, very easily, instantly take action. That being said, we've been doing screenings around the US, we're now doing them in the UK. We've partnered with Into Film, who they basically have relationships with thousands of schools around the UK, where they provide films to support curriculum. So Hamza is at the moment being used by them to kind of go into schools all over the UK where they can learn about refugees and use Hamza as a starting off point to start that dialogue. So we're basically saying to any organisations, definitely you could use our film, use it as a tool to educate or further whatever mission you have that's trying to help refugees. And it's going really well. We released it 2 months ago, and I think like 15,000 people have downloaded the film and watched it online so far and are sharing it in spaces like this. So going on.
Great. Sorry, I think there's someone there in the green, and then we'll to you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How did you find your partners in the first place? What, people on the ground, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, it was a really... Finding the first partner was the biggest challenge, actually, because I contacted more than 45 different charities who were working in Iraq at the time, asking them initially for help. I mean, really, all I was asking people for is to put me in touch with someone that I could work with, and it just wasn't happening. In the end, I was put in touch with the partner that I work with through the logistics company that I work with, my logistics partner. They deal with all of my logistics and they specialise in transporting humanitarian aid. I'd asked them a number of times actually whether they knew anyone in the area, but I was dealing with their UK office, and actually it was their Dutch office who dealt with Iraq, and they eventually managed to put me in touch with an organisation that they'd been working with for a number of years, that they had a very good relationship with, and that was where it started. They then have a lot of other contacts, and once you start sending a few and people start to realise that you're serious about what you're doing, the doors start to open, and you know, through other partners, I've been put in touch with people in Syria. The doctor that I'm working with in Syria, I was introduced to by another partner in Syria, and you know the doors start to open once you get started.
Great.
Yeah, I can
sorry, do you want to add something there?
just
Yeah,
add
yeah.
something
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just so everybody knows, when major emergencies happen, the charities don't all rush out. They're all trying to do the same thing at the same time and getting each other's way. There is a very strong link between all the charities, and they regard each other as partners. The normal situation is whoever is on the ground already in bigger numbers becomes the lead charity. They do what they're specialists at, but they also manage the whole operation and make sure that no other charities get in each other's way, and the supply of goods and services can get through as fast as possible. And that's quite essential. I know back in 4 or 5 years ago when there was a major tsunami in Burma, you probably heard on the news that none of the charities could get in. That wasn't true. We already had 600 people on the ground who'd been working very quietly in Burma for 14 years, not making a big fuss about it, not annoying the government, but we were able to get those people to the right places within 24 hours, and then we were able to guide the other charities in and help them. And so we do all regard each other as partners in these major situations.
Well, does that apply to, I mean, you know, you say there's a big crisis and all the big global charities are mobilised and they all sort of work together. How would a small charity like Samara's fit into that?
I don't know that I can tell you. I'm not. I'm a volunteer
Sure.
for Save the
No,
Children,
it's fine. It's
and
just-
I've
so,
not
you know,
had so much experience
Do you
on
think
the
there'd be
ground.
room for it? That's what, you know, as they're all sort of gathered around the table. Samara, maybe you could talk on that.
I think, you know, when you're looking at a crisis like what's going on in Iraq and what's going on in Syria, the needs are just so enormous. There's no one organisation or even one group of organisations that can deal with everything. And say, for example, say in Iraq, the UN will deal with the people in camps, and that means that there are an awful lot of people still living outside of camps. I mean, I'm sure you deal with people outside of camps too, but that is the main focus for the UN. There's an awful lot of people living in unfinished buildings, informal settlements, and people are just completely unable to find any sort of employment because there is a huge multitude of displaced people who have all descended on one area in a short space of time. The host community is on its knees, and you know, these people have nothing. So you know, I think we all deal with different tiers of the problem, and you know, some organisations will focus on one aspect and one area, and other organisations will focus on different things. And when you have partners who are living out there, are based out there, then they have a really good knowledge of the area and the situation and which camps, or maybe some of the informal camps that are not covered by the UN. You know, who's been the longest without any food aid or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, question over there. Yeah. Yeah.
This is a question for Frederick. We saw your beautiful pictures. Thank you very much for sharing them with us. I wanted to find out if anyone in particular stood out for you, if you're still in contact with that person, and what you would say to them.
Hi, thanks for the question. Well, actually, the only one I'm still in contact with was Salim, the Syrian man from Aleppo, who we've met and what I've talked to him recently, but what I could say to him would be to continue his work and actually to try to spread it even more and to get even more refugees involved. So I think that is one way also to seize the campaign of fear. If people meet refugees, if people see what refugees are doing and are actually involved in the community, I think it's a really good way to start this big integration on a longer term. So yeah, get the work done and get the work done with other refugees as well.
Okay, yeah, take yours, it's your turn, and then somebody else will come to you next, yeah.
Just interested to learn, how did you come across Hamza and how did you decide to create this film?
So last September, Hamza did an interview with the BBC. She was on the radio, and thousands of people got in touch trying to help her in some way. She was stuck in Hungary at the time, in a really desperate situation, but somehow was still making jokes and absolutely optimistic she was going to get to Germany. Amongst those thousands of people, my mum was one of them. She is a persistent woman, and she called every single day, wrote letters, wrote complaints, finally got Matthew Price back in touch with her, kind of saying, who are you and what do you want? And she basically was like, I'd love to reach out to Hamza and become friends, and they became pen pals for Hamza's last month of her journey and are now good friends. When Hamza arrived in Germany, I got in touch with her, with Miriam, and we asked if she'd be happy for us to come and film. And she was just very, very open and insisted that we lived with her and told her story. She was an English teacher back in Syria, and I think that's why she was so open and so happy for us to use her story to kind of shed light in a personal way on the crisis. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I think there's somebody there, yeah, and then we'll take you, yeah.
About the response or what happened in the United States. I mean, they're not known for opening their doors for anybody outside.
That's for sure.
I just wondered, you know, it must be different. So, what was your thoughts on being English?
I think the majority was that in America there isn't really that much of a personal connection. Immediately when the film came out, there was a lot of people who hadn't experienced refugees coming into their town or weren't really kind of aware of the crisis being in a personal level with them. When we first started showing it in the UK, it was a very much more informed crowd. The media is completely influencing the way that people are receiving the news, and I think that the way people are seeing it in America is very much in these numbers. So it was the first time that they'd really experienced a personal account. So I would say that in a lot of ways it's been closer to home. And in America, the experience is completely different. It's further away. It's not part of the path that these Syrians are taking. So in a lot of ways, like, it takes a lot further to get there. It's a plane ride away. So yes, it's been a very different journey from here to there.
Okay, someone over there, wasn't it? Someone over there wants a question? Yeah. Okay, you far away, yeah.
Around the charities, I can imagine that individuals work with whatever help they can get from all of you. But our organisations, such as the UNHCR, Save the Children, and the smaller charities, identified as engaging in cultural, psychological imperialism, or for that matter, are they perceived as being participants in the proxy conflicts? And what can you do to mitigate that?
I can give a view, I'm not sure, but you got the inside story, Cameron, yeah. Yeah.
Just very simply, no. And the point that I think we all want to make here is there is no humanitarian solution to this. Whatever we do amongst us is not enough. No matter how much we put out there, it's not enough. It's not meeting the needs. There has been, yes, very generous support but that support is lagging behind the pace and the scope of the needs as they have unfolded over the past 5 years, and now we are well into the 6th year of the conflict. We can be a palliative, but we are not a solution. And the solution and the root causes of this lies with ending the conflict in Syria. And only the peace, a stable peace for Syrians, will end the suffering for Syrian people. Nothing short of that.
Okay, I think the question was sort of wondering whether the big global charities were in any way sort of, you know, they were part of that kind of Western, the different Western or various ideological battles, whether they were engaged with one country or another, or the sort of broad Western.
That was the first answer I gave. I said no.
You said no. Okay, well, are we happy with a monosyllabic answer? Are you okay with that?
I
think it's a very long discussion to have on that.
Can I just chip in on that?
Yes, of course.
Because
yeah, of course.
Of course, that's a really good question, and I was expecting that kind of answer. But of course, people in the region don't see the West only through the eyes of the work of the charities. No. We are also the same countries that provide them with weapons. So that's why you might have that confusion in seeing the work of these people mixed up with airstrikes or provision of weapons. So it's a blurry line. I mean, it's not that easy to make a distinction for someone there to say, oh, this is the good West, this is the bad West. Yeah.
It happens to journalists. It happens to journalists too. I mean,
UNHCR is not an organization of the West. I mean, UNHCR is part of the UN structure, and UN, its General Assembly gathers all of the nations. So it is a body of the United Nations. It's not a body belonging to a particular region, and that's a very important element to make. Most of our staff working inside Syria are Syrians themselves. Equally for Jordan or Lebanon or Turkey or Iraq.
But it is though it's not an uncommon view in many countries. I know I spent time in Sudan, and the UN peacekeepers there are widely seen as being absolutely complicit. So there are sort of tricky areas to do with this. But I think when it comes to
there is a political arm of the UN and there is a humanitarian arm of the UN, and those are two very different worlds.
Also with Save the Children, the 99% of our volunteers in any country are from that country. We only send specialists now to countries, specialists in managing people, managing finance, medicines, and such like. It's very much the charities are seen as part of that country, and the volunteers come from that country. I'm very pleased to say, for instance, in India, we now have a very, very big middle class who are putting in so much money to Save the Children that Save the Children India is financing all we want to do in India.
And ultimately, of course, that is the way ahead, Roger, isn't it? That there is a natural suspicion of Westerners who suddenly arrive in developing countries. I mean, I've experienced it all the time as a journalist. I mean, you know, there's an assumption in many countries which don't have a sort of free press, they have a dictatorship. There's an assumption that if you're from the West, you're a spy. And you have to deal with that misperception as well. So you can understand why the answer really is getting local people to do it. They got more credibility. Anyway, other question? I think we had a couple more. Yep. Yep.
The first one is, how does a country like Hungary get away with building a fence when you say that it is their legal obligation to take in refugees? And the other one was just, I think in the media, Islamic State is portrayed as this, you know, really horrific organization. But then what about the US and the Russians who are aligned with Assad and then Assad? Like, is Islamic State the worst that is happening in Syria, or one of these big powers also aligning with Assad? Like, is that because from what I've heard, I think Assad's forces have killed more people than Islamic State.
That is true. Which part of your question would you like them to answer? I think we'll take one of those because, I mean, the big geopolitical. I think we could be here all night, but we'll see if we can get a succinct answer to your question. Frame your question in one sentence. Jenny, I think it's definitely one for you. Sorry. We've only got a minute left, so you better make it snappy, all right?
As an academic, I don't speculate on the future, so that's the safe answer. But in my personal opinion, if something really big doesn't change there, something really big, like one of these major actors changing dramatically its position in the conflict, be it the United States, be it Russia, I don't see a solution anytime soon. The Islamic State has been contained. It's not the major threat. The United States is not scared by the Islamic State. It doesn't really care about the Islamic State. They know they can contain the Islamic State, and the Islamic State is on the defensive right now, both in Iraq and in Syria. But of course now there is a huge problem, Russia, because if the enemy was Assad, now you cannot really easily, lightheartedly attack Assad forces, because there is the risk you're going to kill Russians. And if you kill Russians, then you have the risk to have a confrontation between the United States and Russia, and nobody wants that. So if any of these actors changes position dramatically, like shifting dramatically position in the conflict, perhaps we have a possibility to talk about peace. Other than that, it's going to last as long as people still think they have a chance to win the war, which is something I don't see happening anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay, slightly pessimistic note on which to end there, but thank you very much again to all our panel and speakers. Let's give them a round of applause. I think it's fair to say that they've all made fascinating contributions. We've seen stories from before the conflict, we've heard about the conflict, we've seen the post-conflict, we've seen individuals, we've seen large numbers of refugees, their tales, we've seen great photographs. I think we've had, a fairly comprehensive journey through the Syrian problem. But I think above all, what has emerged from this is that sense of hope and that sense of resilience, that sense that the human spirit can triumph over adversity. And I think that's a great message to get out. We've seen it through all of your fantastic contributions. And yes, the figures are overwhelming. It's a massively daunting problem. But I hope that this evening you've got a chance to think about small ways in which you guys can help. I mean, you've already helped just by coming here tonight. There's a contribution. You can also help just by talking, having these debates, having these discussions, and spreading the word. Before we go and have drinks and nibbles, and I bet you can't wait for those. I just want to say that you can contribute more if you want. All these groups, all the charities have got websites. You can also contribute by coming along to our next forum, which I'm sure you'll find as interesting as this, or even more so. You can follow Agape Caritas on social media, on Twitter, all of that. There's a presence there. I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors. We have Red Snapper, Caxton Manor, and Smoking Gun. So let's hear it for those guys, because this wouldn't have been possible without them. Okay, I can give you a little teaser that the next forum will be on the subject of shame. Now, shame, it's a strange word, it's a strange idea, but it takes many, many forms and can have very, very serious, even fatal consequences in different cultures, different societies. We're going to examine what is shame. We're going to look at the different types of shame, the nature of it, what causes it, and what effects it can have. So check out on Twitter, check out on the website, and we hope to see you at the next one. But in the meantime, we'll see you for drinks and cannabis, which you're all welcome now. No division, everybody can go along, and thank you very, very much. Thank you.